This is the Unstarving Musicians podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. On this podcast, I feature conversations with indie music artists and industry professionals. It's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Nailed it that time, didn't I? I love it when that happens. Welcome back to another episode. How are you doing? How is your family? Go to unstarvingmusician.com and send me a message to let me know. On that website, you'll find all my contact info, so you can surely get me a message. I'm at Robonzo Drummer on the socials, most of them, the ones I'm on. Or you can go to unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. Really easy. You can just leave me a message right there on your mobile device, your browser, whatever. It's pretty cool. I'm feeling a little anxious this afternoon, but I don't know. I'll tell you what I'm doing about that in a second. My guests are Shannon Curtis and Jamie Hill. They are both alumni. Each of them has been featured in their own episode. I'll put links to those in the show notes if you want to learn more about them after you hear this conversation today. I bet you will. They're pretty cool. I love them, in fact. Hey, would you like to help other independent musicians and indie music fans find the podcast? You can do so by simply subscribing on Apple Podcasts or in whatever podcast service you use. We're in most of them, trying to get in more all the time with all the new ones springing up. It really does help, though. The Unstarving Musician podcast, by the way, is made possible through the generosity of listeners just like you. You can help out by becoming part of the community at unstarvingmusician.com. It's easy. You can join right there. In doing so, you'll get tips and insights that you can use in your music journey, and not just tips from me, even though I've got years of experience, but it actually comes from a lot of the conversations, hundreds of conversations I've had with other musicians I've spoken to as part of this Unstarving Musician project and podcast. And you also get, when you join, you get a free copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide official ebook. And that's all free just for being part of the community. And there are other ways you can support. You can be a producer or a sponsor of the show. Go to unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn how all that stuff works. So, I heard a fantastic interview. Speaking of my earlier mention of being anxious this afternoon, I heard a fantastic interview with photographer David Yarrow on the Tim Ferriss Show, one of my favorite podcasts, and tells some incredible stories in that interview. But he kind of closed it off with a word about optimism, and I'm glad I'm reading this little note about it to you today, because it's reminding me that I'm going to work on that, because I've been kind of freaked out lately, and maybe you have too, with all this pandemic going on. It's crazy. So my guests, Shannon, Curtis, and Jamie Hill. Shannon is in my book, the house concert queen. And Jamie, great guy. He's her faithful and devoted sidekick. He's pretty talented. I kind of short-sold him there, I think, but he's pretty great. He's a big part of what they do. My wife and I attended one of their virtual house concerts earlier in the week. I wrenched it up a little bit. I wrenched up the experience a little bit. I'll tell you about that. But I wasn't the only one, but I got to tell you about this. It sort of speaks to the intricacy of what they're doing on their new virtual tour that they are on. Hey, do you have your artist website, your band website together? Do you have one that you like? You have one, but you don't like it, that is? Well, listen, the easiest way to get that done, or to get it where you do like it, is to try out Bandzoogle. It's the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. I use it. I love it. And let me tell you, when podcasts like this one, management, PR people, agencies look at musicians, yeah, they look at your social media, but they also look to see if you have a legitimate website. It really does help. makes you look bona fide, makes you look serious, because you are if you did that. And it's one of the two things that can help you control the business of your music and your fan-based community. All right, listen. All you got to do to check it out is go to bandzoogle.com. And you can start a 30-day free trial. You can use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year, and plans to start at just $8.29 a month. So seriously, the features are incredible. The support is incredible. It's as easy gets for this kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about updates and patches. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, be glad you don't have to worry about it with Bandzoogle. I'm telling you. Go to bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO, to start a free trial today. You will be happy you did. And check out my site. It's robonzo.com. That's the one that's on Bandzoogle. I need to get in there and tweak it some more. It's great, though. I've been getting compliments on it. You'll like it. So, the intricacies of a house concert, a virtual house concert by Jamie and Shannon, how I mucked it up. Well, they decided, so they were doing their years consisted of, the business of their music consisted of putting out an album a year and going on a house concert tour to support that album. Shannon doesn't play clubs and coffee houses anymore. And she talks all about it in her book, No Booker, No Bouncer, No Bartender, that came up. She decided to write that because she was getting so many questions about house concerts after she started dialing it in. She got them from me, too. I think it was Tom Meany, who's been on this podcast, that mentioned her and led me down the rabbit hole that is house concerts. And I attribute my first house concert, which happened right before the onset of the COVID-19 crisis. So it's the only one I've done, but it was great. It was great. Did it here in Panama with Johnny Burgin, West Side Worldwide Blues Man. It was so fun. I have some videos. I'm going to leave a link to the video playlist from some shows we did, including the house concert. It was fantastic. I look forward to doing them again someday. So, Jamie and Shannon, they decided to go the route of doing their virtual house concerts on Zoom because they are so community-oriented. And Zoom was the right solution for them to be able to see everyone during the performances, to be able to engage with them, and after the music performances to kind of have a collective share fest. And it's pretty cool. I mucked it up because I mentioned mucking it up because we wanted to watch it on our big screen here at home. So we sat away from the camera, which was on my laptop, and that kind of put us out of view of Shannon, Jamie, and the rest of the attendees for the virtual house concert. These things are really small, by the way, and you can attend one if you want to see what I'm talking about. And if you're doing any live streaming and you've always wanted to do house concerts and you want to take a lead from a couple that knows what they're doing, you should go to shannoncurtis.net and check out their virtual house concert tour and ask for an invitation and check it out yourself. And so be prepared to do what I didn't do. I wasn't the only one, but I got to tell you, if you go, be prepared to be close to your camera, to be on camera, to be able to talk. They're not going to put you on the spot or anything, really. They're not those kind of people, but that's part of the experience. And it was really cool. And it was the first time I'd actually seen them. I would love to see one of the in-person house concerts, but another day. I know it'll happen. The nice thing about this one is that, so Jamie's Shannon's producer, but because they're doing them from their home studio now, Jamie can actually perform. Before at the in-person house concerts, he was sound guy, so he's always kind of running around. But anyway, it's changed the dynamic of the show. So we talk about a lot of stuff, obviously about this these virtual house concerts. We talk about the collective trauma response everyone's going through, about news fasting, the denial and slow reeling acceptance of COVID-19 that they went to during the first few days that it came about. It's an interesting process they went through to adapt. They're very business minded, but even more so, they're very community minded. Their community was already tight knit, but it's become even more so. They figured out what to do based on a number of supporters rather than dollars, which they talk about. It's really great. They've gone a Patreon patronage model, and they have a really strong belief in what Jamie calls an open-handed approach, and giving everything that they create away. And they offer it, as Shannon says, without expectations, and why that works for her and works for them. It's amazing. They're really amazing people. I guess, one of the last things we talk about worth mentioning is to honor our work with the words we choose, and that left a real impression on me. All right, enough of me blabbing. Here is me and Jamie Hill and Shannon Curtis. Enjoy. I wanted to say, is there anybody out there?
Yeah. So here's something we have learned from doing Zoom calls for the last 3 weeks. Start the meeting with everybody muted. It's an administrative option you can do.
Okay. And then, okay, cool. I'll do that. Why is that?
Because otherwise, exactly that happens if there's multiple microphones in a room like we have.
Well, that's
everyone starts off unmuted,
It's unusual, though, for there to be multiple connections from the same room.
Yeah.
That's...
We encountered about once every 3 days.
Yeah.
So sort of unusual.
Okay, so...
But hello!
Hello.
Hi.
Let's stay on that topic for just a sec. I'm going to fix that right now, just in case. So is it mute microphone when joining a meeting? No, that's not it.
Yeah, that's it.
Really? That's not for me?
No, that's you. It's in the administrative settings, the one that you do on the web, and in meeting settings, there's an option in there for mute participants upon entry.
Man, that's bullshit. I can't do it from my app.
Well, you can, but there's a thing inside your app in the preferences that says view extra settings, and it will just launch the web interface.
Okay. All right. I'll get to that later.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I was up really early this morning. I've had a couple days where just for some reason my eyes pop open around 4 a.m. and I don't go to sleep. So I got up and read, and then I messed around with the recording I'm working on for a little bit. And then it was time
what are you working on?
Just some drums for a buddy here who does Facebook Live. So he's done a number of recordings. He plays violin, piano, and he put some guitar on his recording and does some singing. So he's writing some stuff, doing these Facebook Lives, and he doesn't really he's doing it in GarageBand, and he doesn't really like the drum sounds in there all that much. He'd rather, and we played together, and he's like, I'd rather have real drums. So sending him over. I haven't really learned to, funny thing is, I haven't really learned to mix. What I have learned to do is to get the best raw sound I can with the gear I have here, and a little bit of EQ, compression. That's about it.
That's the way to do it. I mean,
totally.
That's how everyone does it, really.
Yeah, I talked to a kid. I say he's a kid. He's like 32 or something. Well, he looks so. When I first saw him online, he looked so young. But then I realized, wow, he's been at this a while. And anyway, yeah, he has a great home studio, and we got to talking about doing drums. So he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he has a nice drum set in his studio. And so I just was asking him some questions, and the conversation immediately went outside of my realm of experience, but it was really fun to get it on tape, so to speak. So I can let all the, studio nerds know about it when the episode comes out. And for that section anyway, it's kind of interesting, I think.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Speaking of recordings, I was just listening to, two things. We are recording. The other one is I was listening to your latest release this afternoon. Congratulations. Sounds great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I had to go back, actually. I'm not sure how much or if I've heard any of last year's. So I was listening to that too. And I really liked the opening track on that one. And I kind of want to go back and we'll really just hear them sit and listen to them both a few times. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. They're really different records, so they won't feel redundant.
I noticed that. I mean, kind of opening tracks, they say a lot to me when you're comparing a couple of records, but you got to, get a few songs in too. But for sure, yeah, I could tell they were different. So good job on that.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you guys feeling rested this afternoon?
Yeah, feeling pretty good. Yes, it's weird. I thought that maybe being on a virtual tour like we are would be more relaxed feeling, but honestly, it takes just about as much out of me every day. Just the being, the showing up for the show, the performance, it's a different experience because we're, on screen with people versus being in person. And even though the time commitment for each day is a little less than it would be if we were showing up, in person, it's still the energy you have to put out, like when you're on camera and on screen for the entirety of the time that you're doing it, it's a lot of energy,
especially when you kind of know that everyone's looking at you, because you have to constantly be like, am I doing something dumb with my face? If you're me anyway.
Exactly, right? I know. You have to remember they're all watching. I really do try to practice it being on the camera. Like I did a couple of stories yesterday and a Facebook Live, and I did one just a minute ago and before we came on. And I'm like, all right, I got to be careful, even though this is just a couple of minutes. You try not to do anything, with your nose or whatever.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Your nose is never itchier than when you're suddenly on camera.
Mine's usually itchy first thing in the morning when we walk the dog. So back to the performances. So I was imagining the change. I'm sure you've done something kind of like that, or at least a live broadcast before, just a little something, I'm guessing. But even if you have had, I would have to think there was a lot of upfront things you had to do for the first one. But I kind of wanted to ask, so how many have you done, first of all?
We just finished our 16th show last night.
Wow, that's amazing. And I bet you feel like you've come just such a long way from show 1 to 16 based on getting used to some of those things and others that you haven't even described yet.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to your point of all the stuff we had to figure out in order to do this, just from a technical standpoint, I mean, that's all Jamie. He figured out how to make really great quality, essentially like a TV mix of our performance going into an audio interface and then going into Zoom from that. So people are getting a really great quality sound, but there was so much that went into planning all that out.
We should note, by the way, that it's not just Shannon performing this year. Because we're just performing from the basement and I don't have to run live sound, I can participate too. So I've assembled myself a table's worth of analog synthesizers and drum machines and sound treatment devices, and we're performing as an all-live, all-electronic two-person band with reimagined arrangements of the entirety of the new record. So it's not just like a keyboard and vocal going out over Zoom. It's like a full band mix.
Sweet baby Jesus.
Yeah,
totally.
Seriously.
It took some doing.
Yeah, so when we were putting all that together, and so putting together the technical part of it and also rehearsing individually and then together for the show, we launched into the first show of this tour it's like we were trying to catch a train. I mean, it was just unbelievable, an unbelievable pace to get up and running. And so yes, since then we've gotten to kind of settle into, okay, now it's set up, it's here, we know what we're getting into every day. And in the week since then, we've been able to then explore the nuances of what performing in this context actually feels like, and what things we can explore doing. Because at first it was really just trying to keep it all together.
Yeah. By the second one, did it feel like, okay, we kind of got this, but you still learned some things. But
honestly, even by the first one, we felt pretty good, only because we did such rigorous beta testing. We had 3 solid.
Guys are such geeks.
Well, seriously, it's just like with theater. You don't do the first show the first night, or opening night. You do the first show a week before in what you call dress rehearsal, and these were just dress rehearsals, right?
Yeah.
So we did dress rehearsals for the 3 nights before, and oftentimes revisiting individual songs with our test victims.
Victims,
right? You know that it wasn't even that bad. I don't think we victimized anyone too terribly. We were pretty good out the gate, at least from the basics of it. You
Mm-hmm,
know,
mm-hmm.
the nuances came later. I mean, that's I think what the last couple of weeks have done for me
Yeah.
is just given me a sense. And this isn't specific to this tour. This is any tour. Like you start the tour with the understanding you have of it then, but then as soon as you start doing it in front of actual humans every night, you know, especially humans you don't know, it just totally changes, and the narrative arc makes itself apparent.
Yeah. How does one from Panama get to see one of these shows?
Oh my gosh, we would love to have you. Just if you go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
shannoncurtis.net/tour,
Okay.
or just click the tour tab and take a look at what the dates are that we've got left
Okay, cool.
and pick a,
Clicking on a date to see its time and time zone because they vary wildly.
yeah. So yeah, pick a couple that would work for you and just email Jamie and
Cool.
he'll coordinate with our host to get you an invitation to one of them. Just pick a couple because sometimes there are some hosts, most of our hosts are totally open to inviting outside folks to come. But there are some cases where a host, you know, is having this event just for a specific group of private people. And so, you know,
Yeah,
pick a
sure.
couple.
Or maybe their RSVPs are full because
Yeah.
we're capping them at 30 to keep it an intimate Zoom experience, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The idea being that we all do this together on the screen. It's not something we beam at people. It's something we do with people and they do with each other. So
Sure.
we're keeping it to a screen full. And this goes, by the way, everything we just said about how does one get to see one of these shows, you can leave this in the episode, and this goes for anyone who's listening. We welcome new people approaching our community in that way. And so if anyone is interested, just do the things Shannon just said. Send me an email. We would love to meet you and share what we do with you.
I love that. We will put that in the show notes. um, oh man, you can tell the lack of sleep setting in now.
We've been there
Oh,
a lot. I mean, we got it. We have to all give each other a lot of grace
yeah.
in this time. Every day is potentially really difficult, and our brains are doing strange things. We're all dealing with a collective trauma response, and that's a serious thing.
For sure, you know, and that has been something I've noticed again, you know, in the past couple of days. I mean, I've been pretty fine with it, but over the last week, probably I'm becoming more aware of like how this is affecting me, um, sort of socially. It sounds kind of
Mm.
funny. It sounds kind of funny, but I think you know, I kind of realized like a lot of people's like, yeah, I kind of like spending this time at home. It's me and Sammy and the dog and the cat, and you see a few neighbors, and going out's weird and all that, but I don't mind not having all the commitments and not being around people, which I know sounds really shitty. And I have a little bit of like being in small group anxiety anyway, but now I
Hmm.
think I'm getting a whole new, you know, rash of it from like, oh my God, I don't want to be around anyone anymore. What am I going to do when this thing finally ends? So,
Right.
Yeah,
I get that.
interesting.
Yeah.
and then of course, you know, everything in the news would just make you crazy. So I was like, okay, I need to do a news fast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
it is. It's
For-
hard. I have the same instinct, you know, because I can feel what being on top of the news does to me. But it's very much like Schrodinger's news feed. Like I can't look at it, and I also can't not look at it.
I think, you know, maybe what I am realizing right now is like there are times of day when I should not look at it, like right before bed.
Yes. And for
Yeah.
me, it's right upon waking. There's no surer
Sure.
way for me to start my day poorly and anxious than to start by reading news.
You're right. Yeah, and I try to, you know, there's a number of things I try not to do right when I get up. It's like looking at emails, and you know, sometimes I still do because I'm like really hoping somebody replied to something. But yeah, news for sure. So speaking of community and welcoming new people, you know, initially, wait, first I got to back up and say thank you to you guys because I actually orchestrated and played my first house concert earlier this year, with a guy who came from the States, Johnny Burgin, great blues player. And
Awesome.
we actually took a small drum kit into it. The host was amazing. And I followed the playbook that is it no bouncer, no bar.
No
What's
booker, no bouncer, no
Thank you.
bartender.
Thank
Right
you.
on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I followed the playbook as best I could, and you know, shared all those things with my host, and she was great. She's a good friend, and she's actually been, sort of side note, she's been instrumental in helping me write my first song, because I was attending a writing workshop
Mm.
where she hosts them at her home, which led me to the idea of using that. I didn't initially think of doing it there. I started doing something very bad, by the way. I was going to try and host this thing myself on the property where we live, and that didn't work out. And I thought, well, that was kind of stupid anyway. So I reached out. I had a really short list, and the first person I reached out to was really curious. I'd never done it before. So this couple did it. It was great. Johnny Burgin had a great time.
Awesome.
We played a couple of the gigs. And then, and I got to do it right before all this madness started.
Yeah. What a tease.
Totally.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you figured this out about my interest in you two, other than the fact that I've learned that you're lovely people, but the whole house concert thing. And then as I, spoken with you more, you just sort of peel back you've let me peel back some layers of the onion, so to speak, and learn how it all works and the things that that sort of help get you there, which brings me back to community building. I believe this was the area, community building and fan base supporters, the area of the article that I was fortunate to be able to publish with Forbes.com recently that you guys got mentioned in.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Our people love that so much.
They did.
That's great. You guys, there's a lot of people I could have mentioned and thought about mentioning, but you guys always stand out to me in this regard. I guess I'd love to know how that maybe changed in whatever weird way it has or unexpected way with the freaking plague, and how it's evolving, and is there some pivoting involved?
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think we'll each have an answer. So, sweetheart, why don't you go first?
Yeah. So when the reality of COVID-19 became apparent, it was like a slow rolling realization, of acceptance of this new world that we were understanding, and acceptance.
Preceded by denial.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we went from oh, I wonder how this will impact the house concert tour we're going to do this summer, to, oh, I wonder if we should be doing a house concert tour, or, to finally realizing, no, there's no way we're going to be able to tour around the country, going from house to house, spreading.
And that whole process Shannon just described is 4 days.
Yeah, it was a long process of, yeah. But we came to the realization that was, not going to be an option for us, which was a real big challenge, because over the last number of years, our summer house concert tour has come to represent about 75% of our annual income. So we had to figure out a pivot. There was not an option not to. We couldn't just say, we'll take a year off and, and pick it up again. We had to figure out what we could do. And so we actually had a 5-hour long, a whiteboarding session together. And really started, I think, in that session of figuring out what we could possibly do to pivot. The very first thing that we realized that we needed to do was to drill down on what are the values that we have for why we do what we do and how we've approached it, and make really clear what those things are, so that we could then start from that place to recreate the experience of those values in this new context. And so it was really a values-driven approach to designing this pivot. Yeah. We realized two things. That one thing is that our community that supports what we do, they enjoy the music. That is definitely part of it. But it's not just that. It is the music is one of the doors into this sort of little mini world that we've constructed. The podcast that we do is another. The mentoring that each of us does of other artists. The being friends to and supporting other people in sobriety that Jamie does. That's a big part of of how he's of service to folks. So there's lots of doors, but we realized that our community is in this with us for lots of reasons, not just the music. And so we had constructed every year our an album fundraiser each year, to put out a new record. We realized that we could use that opportunity to pivot from raising a bunch of cash for an album project to directing people to doing more like a Patreon model, the monthly small dollar sort of patronage subscription model, as a way for people to just kind of in an ongoing way support the work that we're doing. So that was one of the pivots, because we realized that people want to support us, not just for making a new record every year. It's more than that. So that was an important realization. And then these virtual house concerts, we decided to use the Zoom method of doing it versus like beaming it out on Facebook Live or whatever, because we realized that the being together in a space, whether it's real or virtual, is one of the big values that we had for what we do.
And it's one of the strengths, too, the creating of a temporary sort of autonomous community each evening.
Yes. And the togetherness that allows. And in this time when people are so isolated from one another, we figured that it might be an opportunity for people to meet that need for connection with other people. And it's it's centered around a concert, but again, it's not just about that. It is, we have time for group discussion at the end of every one of our concerts, and my gosh, people stick around forever.
It frequently goes longer than the concert itself.
Oh, wow.
Just talking with each other,
and deeply.
And
not chit-chatting. Like, we set a tone of intentionality at the very outset of that group discussion period. I just tell people explicitly, like, something we would really love to know is how you doing, and not in a good thanks and you way, but in a genuine, deep way. And I frame it in context of this trauma that we're all going through together, because everyone needs to talk about that. Whether they might have that at the forefront of their mind or not, everyone needs to talk about that.
Yeah, and we've learned over the years too, like at our house concerts, that that happens in person too. Not all together on group level, but at the end of a concert, we get people coming up to us for a long time after the show's over, and they need to share something that is going on in their lives, or something, because I think that a shared experience around art of any kind can do that for folks. It can crack people open a little bit, or make them feel a little bit more willing to be vulnerable. And so creating a space for that was really an important part of this experiment for us too. And it's borne out to be really, I think, one of the things that make the events really special. So I don't even know if I answered your question. Those were some of our pivots, but Jamie, did you?
No, I do. So I'll address the second half of Roberto's question, which is sort of the effects that we've seen because of the transitions that we've had to make, vis-a-vis our community. And I guess I was going to say oddly. I don't know if oddly is the right preface, but I didn't expect this. But our community feels like it has gotten tangibly more tight-knit and deeper, and like the connections that people are feeling with us, but also with each other, are feeling palpably stronger in this time. And it might just be because people have more of a need for togetherness in this time of being apart. Maybe it's just that people need that shared experience around this collective trauma. But whatever it is, like the way that people came around us for what we termed our sustainability fundraiser was truly remarkable. And we didn't do this with a dollar goal in mind. We framed it in sort of an unconventional way. So as Shannon mentioned, the point of the fundraiser was that we were, if people supported it, they were doing so by signing up for our Patreon at a level of their choosing. And there's we only had 6 levels, from like inexpensive at $5 a month to very expensive at $100 a month. Which remarkably, 2 people did, That was more of just an aspirational context, more than anything. But a couple of people actually did it, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But the point of it was that we weren't counting dollars raised in this fundraiser. We counted supporters, and that's it. And it didn't matter if you came in at $5 a month or $100 a month, you still counted as one supporter. And we had 3 different sort of incremental goals: 50 supporters, 100 supporters, 150 supporters. And like with previous Kickstarter model fundraisers that we've done, we had a thing that we would do, like if we get to 50, we can do this. If we get to 100, we can do this. The top goal at 150 was sort of our pay it forward goal, where if we hit that goal, then we sort of felt, all things being equal, that we would probably be in stable enough a position that I would be able to start donating some of my time as an engineer to helping other artists whose incomes have been devastated in this time of pandemic, when they can't play live shows, can't tour, can't do the things they usually do to make money. So I could theoretically help people mix and master their records at no cost to them, to help them have something new to put out into the world and hopefully generate some new interest around their career and some new income from. So the combination of those things, the storytelling around the pay it forward goal, and the idea that, like, by supporting what we're doing, our people would eventually be able to help support the art community and the music community more broadly. I think it was a really, really good, at the risk of sounding like a hippie, vibe for this time. Like, it really felt good to be putting that sort of energy into the world, and I think it felt good for our people too. And the way that our community came around us for this fundraiser was amazing. We hit the top goal. We went like 12% past it, which was amazing. We ended up with like 160 plus supporters, new supporters, and that was remarkable. But like the words of encouragement that we were getting, and the keep going guys, you can do it, just the supportiveness that we felt from our people felt different, I think, to us this time than in previous years. Stronger, more passionate, more encouraging. It was really neat to see. And in the time since then, especially as we've pivoted into quote unquote tour, that same feeling has perpetuated itself through the shows and also through our online experience with our people. Everything just seems deeper and warmer and kind of ooey gooier. People seem more willing to and eager to engage in a vulnerable way, to go directly to talking about important things in an emotionally vulnerable way, as opposed to just keeping it sort of Facebook surfacey, which I think more could have characterized the time before March. Every person who supported our fundraiser and who supports our Patreon in an ongoing way gets invited to this private Facebook group that we have. It's called the Misfit Stars private Facebook group. And that has just become this self-selecting group of people, just a couple hundred strong, who have this like sort of unspoken but deeply held group level commitment to being kind and open and honest and vulnerable and supportive with each other.
Wow.
The group's not really about us. It's really about just creating a space for people who are the types of folks, and they are all of our Patreon supporters. That's how you get into this group. But the space is really used for people working through stuff together. Like somebody posted a question the other day in the group. She's a mom of a couple of teenagers, and she's like, "Hey, I'm just curious to know if anybody here, parents or teachers, who have heard of a school's reopening plan that you feel good about. So far, I'd love to hear your thoughts." The conversation has been incredible, and neither Jamie or I have kids, nor are we teachers, so like we don't really have a stake in this particular conversation, but to see everybody coming around each other and sharing their thoughts and encouragements with each other
and supporting each other through their thought processes,
and to be able to talk about an issue that if you were talking about this in like regular social media could very quickly become just a hellhole of political just whatever, baloney. Yeah. But instead it's actually really thoughtful and encouraging, and we don't know what's going on and what is the best solution, but here where they're sharing their ideas and they're sharing their experience, and it's really refreshing. Like it's just like a little microcosm of the kind of world we want to live in general, and I think that's really what it boils down to. I think for us, the kind of community that we want to foster in our lives is just like a little mini version of a world we'd like to live in. Yeah,
it's a real statement of the type of community that you've built. And I don't recall, but did you have a Patreon presence, or were you guys doing anything on Patreon prior to all this new way of doing things? Okay,
for about 2 years, but it had it's 5 times larger in size now than it was pre-March.
Right. We had it in existence to support our podcast. That's kind of the structure we had done. We started our podcast in November of 2018, and we set up the Patreon as a sort of a support to that. And at the time, I don't think we really knew. That was another result of one of our whiteboarding sessions where we were like, okay, we feel a need to develop some kind of like umbrella over the work that we do. There's my songwriting and the shows that we do under my name. And then there's Jamie's work as an engineer and as a mentor of other artists and, and producer and all that. And then there's this middle ground where it's both of us, but there's no structure around it. And
but that's actually kind of more of what we do.
It's kind of
everything together.
It's more that's sort of like a bigger presence, but we didn't have anything to define that. And so that's actually how we ended up with the idea of starting a podcast, was to find something to do that would sort of be that umbrella of the of the work that we do together. And so that's why we started it. And I don't think we really realized we couldn't have known at that time that we were laying the foundation for a structure that would become that would feel much more essential for people come March 2020.
Yeah.
We didn't know then what we were preparing for, but clearly this is the time for which that structure was created back then.
I think that's right. It's like we built a container, and this is the thing that needed to go in it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I want to go back to the no dollar value approach that you had to the sustainability fund, because it's something that I took your word on, a concept I took your word on with house concerts, and it worked out really well in that one, that one that I've been able to do thus far. But in this case, what made you go that route? And I know it has to do with it's linked to the decision that it was number of members that mattered more than a dollar value. Can you just kind of walk us through the mindset and the thinking behind that?
Sure. Gosh, and we'll each have answers.
Sure. I mean, I think that it is a similar approach to the open donation house concerts concept that we do,
I think when you give people an opportunity to reflect for themselves on what the value of something is, they might value it even more than if you tried to sort of second guess the process and arrive in your mind at a median or average value that someone might reasonably be expected to put on it.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. There's also, I think, a much more I don't know, would you call it like a metaphysical sort of approach? I how much do we believe that when we offer open-handedly what we have to offer the world, that we will receive in return what we need to be taken care of, and on a purely personal, spiritual, and I'm not religious, but personal, spiritual level, I can tell you that for me, the experience of offering without expectation or without a predetermined dollar amount of value or whatever, but offering what we do open-handedly is a spiritual exercise that's really good for me. It keeps me on that sort of razor's edge of I'm doing what I'm doing because I believe that it's what I ought to be doing, and I can offer it with an open hand and an open heart, and it without any expectation. It's when you're in a relationship with somebody that you love, you don't love them for the sake of what they're going to give you back. You do it because you love them, and you offer your love because it's a gift. But you do get stuff back, and the stuff that you get back when you do it open-handedly like that, I think is worth a lot more, and it's a good exercise for me to approach something that maybe ought to be more concrete, finances maybe ought to be more well-defined and planned for, but
ought to be is a big
ought to be is maybe not the right word at all.
Shannon and I each in our own way have sobriety in our background, in our story, and I think that there's some principles that I think we've each learned in that process that are related to what we're talking about here. One of them is the idea of not trying to control everything.
Yeah.
That's a big one for both of us. And I think that we've just both learned very simply that when we try to control things more, it tends, energetically and spiritually speaking, for whatever reason in the universe not to work out as well for us as when we just, in an open-handed way, approach a situation. And secondly, there's this idea also of like attracting rather than promoting, right? The idea that if you create a space for people on their own terms to approach what you do, in whatever way feels best for them, that when you create a space that not just invites but requires anyone who might be interested to bring themselves halfway toward you, then by inviting them and requiring them to do part of that work, you'll get more investment from that person because they're making an affirmative effort from their side to approach what you're doing on their terms in a way that makes sense to them. And so it's something they're doing of themselves, and it's something they're doing for themselves and of their own volition, which means that it will be more deeply rooted inside of them because they're doing it from a deeper place inside of them.
It's relationship, not consumption.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Can you elaborate on how you accomplish that latter part, where just to kind of help me understand how it works? Maybe it's very simple, but it sounds intricate. So I was just kind of making some notes here, but I heard something to the effect of, in inviting people to be part of something where they're going to come halfway towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think the biggest part of it, just in terms of concrete applicability maybe to another musician or to any other music career, we make a real point of giving everything we do away. Anyone who wants to listen to any of our music can do so freely. Right at Shannon's website or on Bandcamp. All the stuff that we do to engage our community is it's not paywalled. It's all just right out there in the open. When we friend people on Facebook, we don't give them a business page. We give them our personal Facebook pages. And we make a real effort to engage with people and to see them as much as they see us. It's about it not being unidirectional. It's about us just being part of a community of people. And we bring what we bring. We happen to be artists, so we bring art. But we also are, it's not just all about us. We're also super interested in what other people have to offer and to bring. And, we're constantly looking to surround ourselves ever more with people who put energy into the world that helps us feel better about the world. And, in that spirit, we don't view our music careers in a transactional kind of way. I do a ton of work as a producer and a mixer and mastering of records for free. And it's funny. Anyone these days who asks me what my rate is, I always just tell them it's sliding scale. It's kind of pay what you can. And I always tell them, here's what my ideal rate is, and if you can pay this, please do, because some people paying my full rate enables me to work for free for other people. But in absence of any other influencing factor, if there's something in the world that I want to see more of and I can help encourage it by putting some of my own labor into it, I'll do it. And I think that we just generally approach everything in our careers that way. This idea that we do what we do and we want to share it with you and we hope you get something out of it. And that's all that we can control. That's right up to our edge of the side of the street. Any further or subsequent response to that, that's out of our hands and out of our control, right? If we give open-handedly, we just have to let go of the results. But paradoxically, I think by letting go of the results in that way and just being open-handed about what we do, I think we invite some really good energy back into our lives. At least that's how it feels being on the receiving end of it.
Yeah, because I think that the people who then who do accept the invitation to think for themselves, oh, is this something that's worthwhile to me? Then they get to take a step forward to actually engage in supporting it, which makes them invested. Which when we invest parts of ourselves, whether it be money or just emotional energy, we become connected. And it's not about someone having purchased a ticket and saw a show and like a consumption model. It's people got to have an experience that they were given with an open hand and got to have an opportunity to decide, is this something that I want to see more of in the world? And and if so, how much do I want How much do I want to support that? How much can I support it?
And
It's
what's really interesting, I think, to both of us is that like we can there's like a meta level to this, and Roberto, I'm sure that you'll see this as you do more house concerts once we can do that again. Like with the open donation model, we know with a certainty, and we can actually see this really explicitly with the virtual tour we're on, because every single donation doesn't go anonymously into a vase or a jar on Shannon's keyboard. It comes in through PayPal or Venmo, so we know exactly how many people are giving and how much each. And only about a third of the people at any of these virtual concerts are actually making a donation, right? Meaning that 2/3 of the people see the experience, hear, and I talk at some length at the end of the show about what does open donation mean? What does it mean to name your own ticket price? What does it mean to engage with art in an open-handed way? And even with that framework, 2/3 of people just kind of go, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Oh, except for some of those people are also the category of folks who don't have an income right now.
Yes,
And we're
that's
very
fair.
explicit about the
Yes.
fact that if anybody's in a tough financial situation, because of coronavirus or any other reason,
Yep.
that we don't want them to donate for the experience. So that's an explicit part of this model, is that folks can come and enjoy it as a gift to them if they are in a
That's right.
spot where they can't afford to contribute financially
And I'm
to
glad
it.
you said that.
Yeah.
But that aside, still there's a whole bunch of people who come to these experiences and have done certainly throughout the entirety of the time we've been doing house concerts, and just like take it and don't contribute back and then go. And like that's fine, and it's fine for a couple of reasons. One, like we play the averages, right? So for every person who doesn't feel like they need to support it, there's somebody else who feels a need to support it incredibly generously, and it averages out in a way that seems to work out okay for us. So that's one. Two, it's so important for us, and Shannon just alluded to this, that anyone who is at one of our concerts and is experiencing financial difficulty or distress, be able to have that with no feeling of regret or guilt, and really for it to be explicitly said that this is our gift to you, because people need grace when they're down. And third, also, and perhaps most importantly, what we're doing is really unusual, and like we recognize that. And by modeling this behavior for people and by giving them a chance to engage in an open-handed way with no strings attached, like they might not engage the first time, and like we said, that's fine, but a seed has been planted, right? Like maybe these people have never once before in their lives been asked to place a value on an artistic experience, or more broadly on the idea of art in the world. Maybe they've only ever been forced to deal with art in a transactional way, right? You go to a concert, you pay a ticket. You go to the museum, you pay a ticket. It's a quid pro quo where you put down a fixed amount of money that you can see on a website somewhere, and you decide in advance, yes, this is going to be worth X dollars worth of entertainment to me, right? And ticketing makes it not be about art, but about entertainment, really, because that's what transactionality does. It forces it away from that pure artistic experience. But by putting an experience right in front of people in sometimes a slightly unexpected way, where they all of a sudden are confronted with the ability to really just make whatever decision they want to about what this is worth to them, they might not make a financially based decision the first time, but I know that that experience is going to resonate within them. And that, I think, it's really important for the world, Like, music didn't used to be about money. When I was a kid, it wasn't about money. It was just about expression and trying to find my people,
Sure.
and, community and expression and feelings. Like, I think that all the capitalist stuff that gets put on top of that as we're adults is really destructive in some ways. And
It's certainly distracting.
Yeah.
Certainly
Yeah.
distracting. It's funny. I recently took on a writing project with kind of this model we're talking about. Why don't you just pay what it was worth to you? I want to do this for you, and I'm almost completely done with it. But the feedback, has been really great. The experience has been really great. I really enjoy the individual I'm working with. She's a special person, and yeah, I guess I brought it up because I wasn't. Now I feel like maybe, and hearing you talk about the model that you pursued, that maybe I wasn't really sure of all the reasons why I was doing it that way,
Uh-huh.
but it was something I wanted to try, and I'm trying to remember if I had this same open donation concept from the house concert model that you use in the back of my mind. And it's certainly, I've seen it around elsewhere. When I was thinking about it, about, offering this tour, I thought, yeah, it'll just be like a tip jar. So it's fun to do it that way. And it's something I'm looking forward to experimenting with. And you gave me some nice things to think about. And so
Can I jump in on something,
yeah,
Roberta, really
sure.
quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
You touched on something there, which is you referred to it in passing as sort of maybe being like a tip jar. And I just wanted to underscore the idea that in our world, that's a word that we don't use and indeed discourage people from using.
He's read the book.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I know,
I
but I want to say
I didn't
this. I
study
want to say
before we
this
got
for people.
together.
I want to say this for people who are listening, though.
Yeah.
When you refer to something as tips, it devalues what you're doing because it implies that the thing you're doing has no intrinsic value and that any money that's being given to it is ancillary to and outside of that, because that's what a tip is. A tip is adjacent to proper compensation, right? And theoretically, if done properly, donations can be proper compensation. It's just compensation where you're not telling someone what it's worth, you're asking someone what it's worth.
Yeah, it's a good
So
point.
it's a very small verbiage change,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something we've really had to work through in our own life,
Yeah.
because it touches on feelings of scarcity, right? Like it's hard at first when you're doing donation-based concerts to say in a confident way, my work has value, and yes, I'm doing this in an unconventional way, but I want to honor it with the way I talk about it, And it's really easy to be like, oh, it's just tips. Oh, it's just crumpled ones. Oh, I'm not worth anything. I don't need money. But of course we do. We live in a society where we have to pay for things, So I think it's really important to honor the work that you do with the words you choose to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Actually, I was very careful about that when we did the house concert, and I think it served us well and served the host well.
Right.
And yeah, I'll have to think about that. Interestingly, I don't think I used that language with my friend for whom I'm doing the project, but I used it when I was thinking it through in my head. But it has a similar impact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I have to tell you a quick story, but an amazing singer songwriter I know moved from San Jose, California to Austin somewhat recently, and we were catching up. She was actually one of four artists that helped me in some research for the article that you guys were mentioned in, and we were just talking about Austin, and she's really feeling a lot of sadness over the number of musicians that are out of work. And she's in a really unique position. She has a job she really likes. It's first time in a long time, but she decided she would do that. And she can actually, like she told me, she said, I don't have to play covers anymore unless I want to. I can start doing what I want to do. But all these other people she's very worried about. But she had said that, I was seeing money on the streets, and well, no, the thing I wanted to say is when a shocker to her when she moved to Austin was that a lot of the pay is done on tips. She said, and I'm like, well, was that a good thing? She goes, no, not really. So I guess it echoes what you're saying, at least in that one story, that she came from a world where she was playing. She wasn't doing. I don't know how much open-handed donation stuff she was doing, but she was playing for agreed upon guaranteed fees at venues, and a lot of nice gigs. Right, she's working really hard, has been for a long time, and she went to this different ecosystem, and yeah, she didn't think that part of it was great, but obviously, if you I'm sure you hear all the good things about music in Austin. So there's a lot there that she loves. So, but it does speak it does echo what you're saying, Jamie.
Yeah, right on.
All right, let's see. The new release, And Her Whisper Becomes a Storm. Did I get it right?
You did.
You did.
Did I understand correctly that the writing for that began in January of this year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard for Shannon.
I figured.
We're on an album cycle of one album a year.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm remembering now as I asked the question that I'm pretty sure it was with you, Shannon, that we talked about habits or things that you do to sort of set yourself up to accomplish all the things you want to do. And I believe it was you, or you were one of the people that said you schedule, time for yourself to write. And that's just like non-negotiable time. And yes, every minute's not necessarily spent writing, but it's the time that you're supposed to be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just given this sort of cycle that we've put ourselves on in terms of releasing an album every year, I mean, the deadline it's barreling toward me, and when the new year happens, that's always like, oh, okay. Yeah. In 6 months, there's going to be a record out. I better make it, and that's not to say that I haven't been thinking previously, before the actual writing starts. I spend a lot of time, just in, private thought moments, mulling over what it is that I want to write about. I tend to write albums on themes. And so it's a great way for me to sort of at album length explore whatever sort of ideas seem most important to me to explore in any given year, and so yeah, when album writing time happens, I do like, okay, this is writing day, and I'm gonna get up there and make something happen, or see what happens, or because the deadline looms always.
And you guys are pretty much a self-sustaining, self-contained operation when it comes to writing, recording, and releasing an album, right?
Totally.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I write the songs. I record like demo versions of the arrangements.
I would almost, more than demo, call what you do wireframes, because they sound. No, seriously,
Yeah.
Roberto. It's because like Shannon wouldn't. She's not one to brag on herself, but I'll brag on her a bit. When we first started, she was just bringing me like literally demos, like in GarageBand, just for keyboard and her voice, and we would have to redo everything from the ground up. Over the years, we've built her up her own little Pro Tools studio, and she's gotten really, really good at Pro Tools and at drum programming and at synthesizer programming. And she, these days, I mean, for this record, the way the record sounds, she brought me something that sounded a lot like this. It just sounded like a more like remedial, not as polished, not as full version, but the ideas were very much there, and the ideas are hers. And like that's ideal, and that's on purpose, because I mean, for anyone I'm working with, I always want to get as much of their artistry and what's inside their head and their heart as possible on tape. Like, I don't want it to be filtered through me. I don't want, ideally, Shan to be going, okay, I'm hearing this kind of sound, and I hear it doing this kind of thing, but you got to do it. I just want her to do it, because the way that someone's like inner voice filters through their own abilities and their own way that they relate to instruments and stuff like that, it's going to make something completely unique to them, and that's what you're hearing here. So that was just a total side note, but I really want to lean on that idea that like Shannon's got her own studio and she's kind of a badass in it.
Well, thanks, honey. Yeah, so I do the writing and that wire framing of all the songs, and then I bring those to Jamie, and we do additional production together, and he mixes it and masters it, and we years ago started our own little record label, really just for the purpose of releasing our own music, and it has distribution through the Orchard, and so yeah, it's a one-stop mom and pop shop around here from beginning to end.
Wow, that's cool. And not that we can't do an album or a song without what you have there, but how nice, and especially with the time frame that you give yourself to do an album. So you got all this stuff done, and you started in January for the most part, and you release it in a little after mid-June, the latter part of June. That's pretty amazing, and that's a regular deal, right?
Regular deal every year.
It's amazing. I love it. Yeah. So in the couple minutes we have left here, I have to tell you about something in case you don't know about this. I think it will be very meaningful, could be very meaningful to you moving forward, or at least something of curiosity. But so the next article I'm working on is on the world of online collaboration for music. And when I started asking the Unstarving musician sort of inner outer circle about it, I was hearing about, well, I use this DAW and I use this file sharing service, and that's kind of it. So then I discover a couple of, well, I actually ran across a lot of different things, but one thing I'm seeing, and I'll just mention one app right now. It's called Soundstorming. Have you heard of it?
I
No.
have.
Oh, I haven't.
Have you tried it?
I don't know
by
much
chance?
about it, but I have heard of
Okay.
it.
Well, it's interesting. So the idea is this, and it's, I don't know, maybe, yeah. You basically record ideas on your iOS device. Generally, I think phone, not definitely not, intended for the laptop user, maybe not even the iPad user, but on your iOS phone, and I'm sure soon coming to Android. And you share that with the community. But at first I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, and I'm hearing some stories about some things that have happened on there. But I did discover, so there's another side of this that I've discovered, which is another just example. There are a few players in both of these types of platforms, but the other one is compose.com. So this is kind of more what I consider like a player's platform. So guys like me, acoustic drummer, I went on there and found a bunch of people who've uploaded some ideas, and they're looking for maybe drums, vocals, guitar, certain styles of backing vocals, lyrics, whatever. So I run across a guy, just one example, I run across a guy who's got this great keyboard tune he does on keyboards, and it's like a prog rock style, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to put something on that. So you can kind of see the potential for this. They invite people to submit tracks, and some other drummer might do the same thing. So there's that. But back to this other one, the first one I mentioned, like the Soundstorming type model. I was in a discussion with their founders, one of a couple I've had, and they're exploring this new facet of artists communicating with their fans and letting their fans into the creative process. And I know that you two do this already, but it's a new way to let fans, many of whom who are musicians, and that may also be part of your world, into the creative process, and a super easy way for artists to have daily communication with their fans, their people, their community. I guess that's the better word, right? With their community.
Yeah.
I still use them a bit interchangeably, but I know that's not exactly how you guys do. But so with their community and letting them into the process, and it's just kind of becoming the expectation is that this type of thing will become a new part of how the making of music happens, and even enable musicians to spend a little more time actually creating music, because we have to do so many things now. There's no way around it, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to mention it to you because I know you're always exploring new things, and may not be for your world, but I thought it was worth sharing because you might know others for whom it
That's
would be
so neat
perfect.
to know about. And so for our world, we have a thing that we do and we do it together. And it's interesting, like we're very transparent about what we're up to,
Mhm.
but also at the same time, like we never let anybody hear any part of anything until it's mastered and finished and out into the world.
Very common.
Well,
Right?
and it's very simply because we have a thing that we're aiming at,
Yeah, yeah.
and we'll know when we have it, and then we'll share it. But I could see this being so valuable in another way for even something that we're working on right now.
Yes, I was thinking the same
Yes,
thing.
so Shannon and I are working right now on a remix album, but we're not doing it. We're crowdsourcing it just from a bunch of musicians that we know from all over the world.
Cool.
I've made stems for the entirety of this new album, and they're complete stems. I mean, every single thing, effects returns, everything. And so it's really, really flexible. And we've got people from Germany and Brazil, and a couple people in Florida, someone in New Jersey, someone in New York, someone in California. Someone from right here in Tacoma, a rap guy he's from Mississippi, but he lives up here now. He just took the hook, just the chorus from Bending the Atmosphere, and he wrote all his own verses for it, and it's amazing. And so we're putting together a remix album for this new album, and we hope it'll be a full-length thing. But the idea of just like putting a vocal up on one of these things and then just inviting the entire world to be like, add one thing to this.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
That could be amazing. And then just do the editing and refinement and like putting together process on our end.
Totally.
Yeah. My wheels are turning.
We'll check it out for
neat.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know there's I think there's another platform too, like I haven't looked at it, but Endless, which is sort of in the same world. I believe that Soundstorming is. So yeah, I would love to hear how that goes. Thank you both for spending time with me again.
It's always a pleasure.
It went really fast.
Yeah.
Always does. Well,
does.
Thanks for being willing to get deep with us,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and we may have to do it another time. And I was going to say, and do you guys get to talk about how you're doing?
Oh, yeah. We're doing fine.
In 2020 adjusted terms, I think we're doing as well as could be expected.
Every day is different, and I think that's true for a lot of folks.
I deal with some anxiety some days, and we're both really sensitive empath type people, and we're surrounded by a very large community of freaked out humans. And we take on some of that.
It feels really good to be involved in doing work that feels like it's allowing people a place, an outlet for what they're working through. This record that we made this year is about the idea of doing the next right thing, about getting still and listening to the inner voice, and then making that first little whisper of intention and a step in the direction you want to go. And I think that these are tools that I've had to use every single day in the era of COVID-19. Those practices of getting still and listening and finding strength with others and
figuring out what you can and can't control.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that I'm so glad this is the record we made this year because I've needed it. But it feels really good in this time to be able to offer this work to people who are also potentially in need of these kinds of tools, for navigating this time that we're in. So it feels good to be of service. Yeah. I feel like that's what we're able to do every night when we show up for a virtual concert is, ideally that we can be a place of refuge for people, and maybe give them some encouragement about how they can move forward in this time. And so how that affects how I'm doing, it just makes me feel good to be able to contribute in that way. That's always something that brings me up even if I'm having a down day.
Yeah, same. Regardless of how I'm feeling at the beginning of the day, I never feel better than right after we've done the show. I just feel super free, very filled up, And really,
the podcast when you refer to the show?
Oh, the show, the virtual concert.
The virtual concert.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you have you have the performance and then you have the big share fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And getting to just, immerse myself in this material and this thought process every single day is very healing.
Great idea. All right, you guys. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Roberto.
You're the best, man. Have a great rest of your week.
You too.
You too.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
This episode was powered by Convertkit, which is more than just an email marketing company. Convertkit is focused on landing pages too, giving beginner creators everything they need to start building their email lists. I've been using Convertkit since early 2016 and I love it. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms. You can choose from multiple templates, add personalization and design, and much, much more. The support is great, which is super important. You can learn more about Convertkit and how they can help you connect with your audience so you can make a living doing the work you love by going to unstarvingmusician.com/convert or the show notes for this episode. Hey, thanks for listening. If you have feedback, comments, suggestions, or questions about the podcast, my guests, me, visit unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. You can leave me a quick voicemail right there on that page, right from your browser. All my other contact info is there too, and I would love to hear from you. You can find links, by the way, for just about everything mentioned in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you sharing it with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.